Can you make a decent pizza from scratch in just 2 hours with a regular home oven? Or should you just buy a frozen one? Today, we're putting it to the test. Welcome back. I'm Mo, and you're watching Real Fake Pizza. In today's video, I'm trying to make the shortest and easiest same-day pizza recipe possible. Something you can realistically make at home in just a couple of hours. I tweaked the pizza app and kept things simple. 60% hydration, 3% olive oil, 3% salt, all-purpose flour, and fresh yeast. The dough is hand-kneaded, fermented for just 2 hours at room temperature, and baked in a regular built-in oven. I pour the room temperature water into a bowl, add the salt, and mix it briefly by hand. Then I add the fresh yeast. There's no realistic way to make a true Neapolitan pizza in just 2 hours, no matter what the internet says, so there's no need for the large yeast amount the app originally calculated. I'm using about half of that instead, roughly 2.2 grams. Once the yeast is mostly dissolved, I add the all-purpose flour and start incorporating everything by hand. This is a low hydration dough with a very short fermentation, so it doesn't need extreme elasticity or strength. For this kind of same-day pizza, regular all-purpose flour works perfectly fine. As the dough starts to come together, I pour in the olive oil. This helps incorporate the remaining flour. Then I move everything onto the counter. Hydration is fairly low, and with the added oil, the dough is very manageable. There's no trick or magic here. Just bring all the ingredients together into a fairly homogeneous dough. To do that, flatten the dough with your palm by pushing it away from you, then roll it back by closing your hand toward yourself. Turn it slightly and repeat this motion a few times. As you can see, I started a timer as soon as the yeast went into the water, so we can keep track of the whole process. This technique works well for low hydration doughs like this one. Once you go up to around 70% hydration, you need a completely different approach. If you want to learn more about that, check out my other video on the topic. So the recipe is pretty straightforward so far. The kneading itself only took a bit over 5 minutes. At this point, we let the dough rest for about 20 minutes. After the rest, I lightly oiled 2 plastic containers for the dough balls. I probably used a bit more oil than necessary, but it won't cause any issues. I divide the dough into 2 equal portions and start shaping the balls. I hold the dough in place with my left index finger, then grab the edge with my right hand, gently pull it outward, fold it back onto itself, rotate, and repeat until I've gone all the way around. Once that's done, I lift the dough, seal the bottom with a pinching motion, then place it on the counter and drag it toward me while cupping it with my hand. This helps tighten the surface and gives you a nice round dough ball. The balls go into the containers, get covered, and after about 90 minutes at room temperature, they're ready to bake. About half an hour later, the baking steel goes into the oven, preheating at max temperature for a full hour. Steel transfers heat far better than a stone, and in a regular home oven, that's a big deal. Time's up! The oven is at max temperature, so let's bake some pizza. For stretching, I sprinkle a bit of regular flour on the counter, dust the dough ball on both sides, and stretch it out to a medium-sized pizza. I like to work from the center outward, but honestly, use whatever method feels right for you. The dough turned out surprisingly airy, easy to handle, and stretched really well. Nothing fancy here, just a simple margarita, tomato sauce, grated pecorino, fresh basil leaves, and fior di latte. I par-bake the base for about 3 to 4 minutes with just the sauce to avoid burning the cheese. Then I add the rest of the toppings and bake it for another 3 to 4 minutes. That's about 7 to 8 minutes total baking time in a regular home oven. To have something to compare it with, let's bake a store-bought frozen margarita.
Abominations! Abominations!
The box recommends 10 to 12 minutes, but after around 8 minutes, it already looked pretty baked, so I pulled it out. Probably half of you think it looks fine, while the other half strongly disagrees. The bottom does look baked, and when you cut into it, it feels crisp, but also very, very dry, which is kind of what you'd expect. No real surprises there. Now, for a proper contrast, let's see how our 2-hour homemade pizza turned out. Honestly, it doesn't look bad at all. The crust lifted a bit with some color, and the cheese melted well. Even the bottom crisped up. While expectations were low for both, the difference in texture and flavor is clear. The store-bought pizza lacked flavor, and the dough was very dry and hard to chew. I'll let you be the judge, but for us, the 2-hour homemade pizza is a solid success. If you've got some tomato sauce and cheese at home, throwing together a quick dough can be a very reasonable alternative to frozen pizza. We usually buy things like sauce and cheese in bulk, portion them into 2 or 3 pizza servings, and freeze them in Ziploc bags. That way, we can use better quality ingredients with much more flavor, often for less money than a store-bought pizza. Plus, there are no additives or artificial ingredients, and baking together with the family is a lot more fun than going to a crowded shop, at least for us. Out of curiosity, I repeated the same comparison the next day in my cheap Secotech electric pizza oven. It's still very much an entry-level oven, but it heats up in about 20 minutes and already gives better results than a regular home oven. Baked at 300 degrees Celsius for about 7 minutes using the same par bake method, the homemade pizza turned out slightly crispier and noticeably less dry. The store-bought one, on the other hand, was still dry, hard, and almost flavorless. I'll leave you with some footage from that bake. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have you ever tried a short fermentation dough? Would you give it a go? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out my other videos.